All right, it should be live. I don't know if you want to share the link everywhere.
We have a link.
Well, not yet. Hold on.
I I am so technically behind the rest of you guys. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Come on, tongue, you got to work there. That's a little better. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I do see the live stream there.
She sells seashells
Oh,
by
I
the
just
seashore.
started podcasting, children. Okay, yeah, I do see the live
Sorry,
stream there.
I just wanted to know if you had any of this.
No, thank you.
Okay.
You're on video.
I'm too cute. I can't stay.
Oh, I just.
I'll see that too cute and raise you one.
I moved out to the garage specifically to stop interruptions, and it's like,
Dream on.
I know.
Now
I
then,
mean,
you wanted to discuss some. Oh, we need to
it's,
post
yeah,
the thingy.
yeah, that's the first thing. I mean, when we have like 6 hosts or 4 hosts, I can mute and allow things to go on for a minute while someone else is talking. But when there's 2 of us or even 3 of us, that gets to be more difficult.
Mm.
There, it's posted in Telegram.
Yeah, I just went to Telegram and I see you posted. Okay.
Uh,
I'll let you do it in Discord then, too, because
okay,
you're way ahead
I'll
of me.
put it in the show announcements. Okay. No, I was gonna ask, do you want to host today, and I'll just do the innard stuff, and we can switch back and forth on all the articles, one for one.
Well, I think we can manage that. I thought I said last episode I wasn't going to host the next one, but
But you don't have
that's
to. You don't have to
that's
if you don't
beside
want
the point.
to. I
I
was
mean,
discussing it with you.
I don't think I should be so um,
Okay.
hidebound about that. I'll take it.
Okay. And I will try and monitor the chat on
Thank you,
YouTube.
because I do not multitask well.
Yeah. But
Okay,
people
shall
are going to
we?
have to be somewhat accepting of the fact that there's only 2 of us, and as much as we try to cover everything, it doesn't always work out.
Yep. Well, the show must go on.
Yep,
All right. We Audacity ready?
I am Audacity ready.
Three, two, one, record. Of course, the traffic was nearly silent through that.
Yep.
Here comes one. Okay. Let's do the zeros. Three, two, one, zero.
0.
Well, I guess all we got to do now is the show.
Yeah, and maybe, further discussion of Garrett P.I., one of the greatest book series ever written.
Well, it is one of my favorite. I read it aloud to at least 2 people. I tried to read it to Suzanne, and she just didn't get interested.
Yeah, I didn't even read the final couple of books, I think.
I did.
I think
I
I read
didn't
some of
read them
the
to anyone, but I read them.
some of the synopsis where he evidently got married to Tinny, and then like they went their own ways with some memory wiping thing or something.
Yeah, yeah. Let's just. We should have. From the time Glory Moon called surrendered, that was it.
Yeah.
He was just a broken old man.
Yeah.
All the silver in the Vetinari could not
You started seeing a lot less of the dead man at that point too, which is really too
Yeah.
bad.
Well, yeah. It was really a interesting take on Nero Wolfe, actually.
Yeah, actually.
Um, only with Garrett being the Archie figure, he was quite a bit more active in making the decisions,
Yeah.
since the dead man sometimes stayed asleep for a while.
Yeah, and the dead man wasn't exactly, prone to getting up and moving around either.
Well, he was dead.
Yeah.
All right. Uh, welcome to Garrett Cast, where we discuss the fantasy writings of Glenn Cook.
Glenn
Uh,
Cook, not Orson Scott Card. Oh my gosh, how did I make that mistake? It was horrible. Horrible.
it was. I was wondering why you're talking about Orson Scott Card.
Well, because Orson Scott Card has the same problem when it comes to long series and actually
Mm.
being able to finish it, and instead of just carrying on and on and on and writing like garbage the further he goes down the series. Keep father. And Ender series. But yeah, I mean,
An ender.
yes. I mean, it started out great. I love the first book. The second book's not bad. Third book's okay. After that, it starts getting a bit rough.
I have been reading an author I just stumbled into thanks to Amazon Kindle named Charlie Holmberg, who is apparently a Mormon woman living in Utah and all, but none of that shows up in her books. I have read several series and several standalone books. I just keep falling in. I'm amazed she's written so much and I hadn't heard of her,
Hmm.
with it all being very, very good to superb. Um, and every series has a different imagining of magic and magic use,
Oh,
and completely different. You cannot tie all these books together. There's no way. But it's superb writing. I haven't seen anything more than a trilogy. She might be working on a fourth book in the Paper Magician series.
yeah. If you like that, then you kind of got to check out Brandon Sanderson with his Cosmere.
Okay.
Cause,
I will probably run out of Charlie Holmberg someday. I had no idea she'd written as much as she has.
oh, Brandon Sanderson's written so much, and all of his different series have completely different, styles of magic, but they're all related. And there's actually a couple of characters that will show up in all the series.
Well, these are not related. That's what amazes me, that one author could write so many great worlds, each with a different system of magic that doesn't relate to any other. It's amazing. It's incredible stuff.
But anyways, we should probably start another
Do the show?
podcast. We should start another podcast called Bookcast or something that hasn't been done like 50 million times already, and start this show, mintCast.
This show. Oh, well. Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. This is episode 405. This is episode 405.5, recorded on Sunday the 5th of February, 2023.
Freshly thawed. I'm Joe.
Recuperating from teaching, I'm Moss. First up in the news, Mint 21.2 has the codename Victoria. OpenSUSE updates. Hello System says hello for the 0.8th time. New Firefox allows imports. XFCE goes waylanding. Cosmic DE speeds up. OBS Studio fixes Linux Wayland bug. And Elementary has a new release. In security and privacy, we report on After Log4j, Bold Move, and Malvert. Then in our wanderings, Joe calls Texas for icing, and Moss is having new phone fever. Bill is in Colorado doing a rescue and will be back next episode. In our innards section, we discuss what you can do with old Android devices, besides throw them against the wall. And finally, the feedback and a couple of suggestions. In the news, Mint 21.2 has the codename Victoria. This is from Londoner with help from the Mint blog. Mint 21.2 has been assigned the codename Victoria. We've said that a few times now. We have the blog post linked. Yes, it's linked. New repositories have been set up on packages.linuxmint.com. Linux Mint 21.2 Victoria release is planned for the end of June 2023. The XFCE edition will ship with the latest XFCE 4.18. Well, that probably won't be the latest by the time that comes out. 21.2 preview login screen improvements, PIX rebase, and support for HEIF/AVIF images and AI documents.
That'll be interesting in June. Okay.
June Moon Spoon.
Yep. In other news, OpenSUSE updates Salt, Vim, and Node.js. This is from OpenSUSE.org. This week's OpenSUSE Tumbleweed Snapshots had a steady amount of software packages in each of the daily releases. While Vim, Node.js, and Salt updates made the headlines, AppStream, KDE, frameworks, and the Linux kernel provided several important updates. It's always nice to see Vim getting an update.
Put like 12 paragraphs.
Right. You don't want to dump that whole thing there.
And normally we have three guys in here and we're bouncing ideas off, but with the two of us, we're probably going to be more taciturn than you're used to.
Yeah, this is probably going to be a short show this time, but there's not a whole lot we can do about it.
Moving along, Hello System 0.8, a macOS-inspired FreeBSD variant, is out. This is from Veronix. Following the demise of PCBSD/TrueOS, the most compelling BSD-based desktop operating system with a pleasant out-of-the-box user experience is Hello System. The Hello System OS has been aiming to be the macOS of the BSDs, and for the past few years has been building a macOS-inspired desktop atop FreeBSD. Out today is Hello System 0.8 as their newest version built atop FreeBSD 13.1. I should have dated that. It's almost a week old. The Hello System 0.8 release continues to focus on being a desktop OS catering to simplicity, elegance, and usability. With the version 0.8 release, they have rebased against FreeBSD 13.1 release, improved its launch command, pre-installed the VirtualBox guest editions for a better Oracle VM VirtualBox user experience, improved handling for MIDI controllers, initial support for launching some app image files using the launch command, and support for recent Intel graphics like Gen 12/Z Tiger Lake using the DRM kernel module ported over from Linux 5.10. There are some of my background traffic showing up. With Hello System 0.8, there is also, that was a good sentence, there are also various user interface improvements, force quit application support in the system menu, and a wide range of other desktop infrastructure and UI tooling. The Hello System operating system is also now shipping with Trojita as its email client. GPU acceleration is enabled for web engine-based browsers like Falcon. There is a new processes utility and a wide range of fixes throughout the platform. Downloads and more details on Hello System 0.8 via GitHub. I'm tempted. I mean, if you're going to look at Elementary 7, you might as well look at another closed walled garden.
Yeah, I'm still not all that interested in running anything FreeBSD, so...
Well, Mac OS is FreeBSD.
I'm not interested in running Mac OS either.
That's true. I'm not interested in running Mac hardware, but the software might be interesting.
No, the Mac hardware can be fun because like I keep saying it, the screens are freaking awesome. So,
well, with my budget, I would have to get something 5 or 6 years old at least.
No, they basically didn't change any of their hardware from like 2012 to like almost 2020 or something like that. And then things started changing, and like most of the hardware stayed the same. So even a 2013 to 2015 Mac will have a really good screen.
Okay.
But moving on, Firefox 110 will finally let you import data from Opera and Vivaldi. This is from 9 to 5 Linux. Mozilla is already working on the next major release of its open source, free, and cross-platform web browser, Firefox 110, which promises to finally let you import your data from more web browsers. With Firefox 109 already hitting the repos of various GNU Linux distributions, it's time to take a closer look at the new features coming to Firefox 110, which is currently available for public beta testing on all supported platforms, including Linux. The coolest new feature in Firefox 110 appears to be the ability of the open source web browser to detect and let you import data like bookmarks, cookies, history, and passwords from web browsers like Opera, OperaGX, and Vivaldi. Until now, Firefox and Linux only allowed users to import data from Chromium browsers. So if you're using Opera or Vivaldi on your GNU Linux distribution, you'll finally be able to easily migrate to Firefox, starting with version 110. On Linux, to import your data from another web browser, you'll have to go to the main menu. It's the last icon on your toolbar in the hamburger menu. The Access the Bookmarks section there, click on the Manage Bookmarks at the end of the list, or just hit Control-Shift-O and skip all that, and then click on the Import and Backup Import Data from Another Browser. Now, I do know that if you haven't run Firefox in a while and there's an update, that there will be a pop-up that asks if you want to import all your bookmarks. So that is another way to do it. Or on a first install, that will also come up.
Of course, the question arises, why would you use another browser anyhow?
Right. Well, there were reasons in the past to use like Opera. It had some security features that were built in that took a lot longer to get anywhere else. I don't know about like Vivaldi, but I'm sure that there are reasons that someone would want to use Vivaldi as their main. And then yeah, it's good that Firefox has the ability now to import from more browsers. I'd hate to see Chrome just take over everything and have no competition anymore.
Yeah. Well, considering that Opera and Vivaldi are both Chromium based anyhow,
Yeah,
as is everything these days,
pretty much.
except Epiphany / GNOME Web and Firefox. And Safari, but there is not a Linux version of Safari these days.
Yeah, they even got rid of their Windows version, didn't they?
Yeah. Okay. XFCE Desktop 4.20 will bring Wayland support. From 9 to 5 Linux. Work on XFCE 4.20 kicked off earlier this month with a release of libxFCE 4 windowing, a new dependency for the XFCE desktop environment to provide support for the next generation Wayland display protocol. It's been next generation for what, 12 years now? Shortly after the release of the libxFCE windowing library, XFCE's desktop manager, XF Desktop, has been ported to Wayland. At the moment of writing, only preliminary Wayland support is available since libxFCE 4 windowing partially supports Wayland. Also ported to Wayland was XFCE's panel, called appropriately XFCE 4-panel, which also received a bunch of bug fixes and code cleanup to improve the task list, window menu, clock, and other of its components. Of course, XFCE 4 panel's Wayland support also depends on the new libxFCE 4 windowing library, though all X11 Wayland-specific dependencies are optional. libxFCE 4 windowing is a new library and is still being developed. Still, they're hopeful that the final release of the XFCE 4.20 desktop environment, which will probably see the light of day at the end of 2024, will come with a full Wayland implementation. The development of the XFCE 4.20 desktop environment takes place under the XFCE 4.19 umbrella, and packages are already available for Arch Linux.
It's cool.
And you can put that in your reefer and smoke it.
Yeah, yep. It's 420. But yeah, don't know really what else to say about that. It seems fairly straightforward. Okay, more on Cosmic DE to kick off in 2023. This is from System 76. System 76 is moving the feel and front-end functionality of Pop! OS to a faster code base, giving you a familiar but snappier experience. Alpha coming soon. UI support has been added for tabs and segmented buttons using the segmented button widget. Tabs keep Cosmic DE clean and organized with shorter, more focused menus, while segmented buttons allow an action to take place when selected. So while you're customizing your desktop to use horizontal workspaces instead of vertical, for example, your selection will cause the desktop to reflect this behavior. Okay, somehow I ended up like in a completely different spot in the show notes, and now I am lost.
They do bounce around a lot.
I don't know what the hell happened. I wasn't
You
scrolling or
only
anything.
had one more line, which is lots more on the System 76 website.
All right, I'm back there now. Oh, okay. Well, so Pop! OS is going to have a new desktop environment.
They have been rewriting their previous desktop environment with some changes in Rust. And it's supposed to be 100% Rust by the time they're done with it. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not interested in testing the interim releases.
Right. I'm not big on having my desktop environment be an alpha.
Okay, OBS Studio 29.0.1 is out to fix Linux. Teeth aren't working. OBS Studio 29.0.1 is out to fix Linux crash on Wayland X11 capture issue. This is from 9 to 5 Linux. OBS Studio 29.0.1 open source and free software for live streaming and screen recording is now available for download as a hotfix release that addresses several issues discovered in OBS Studio 29.0. There are several Linux-specific fixes in OBS Studio 29.0.1, including a crash when using Wayland and trying to use the automatic scene switcher, an issue where screen capturing wouldn't work correctly on X11, a bug where overwriting the theme could cause OBS Studio to fail to start, as well as a software rendering issue. This release also fixes the NVIDIA Audio Effects SDK is outdated message that appears on the noise reduction filter properties when the SDK isn't installed, as well as a crash that occurred when using NVIDIA's audio effect filters and then uninstalling the SDK. Other fixes include a crash that occurred on startup when the app was minimized, a bug in the custom FFmpeg output mode where RTMP would force some encoders, and a bug where alpha wouldn't output properly when setting the app to use the BGRA color format. Furthermore, OSB Studio 29.0.1 fixes a bug where projectors are washed out when projecting SDR content onto an HDR display, fixes an issue with the expander and upward compressor audio filters, and a crash that occurred when using the virtual camera as a source and then changing the canvas resolution. Also fixed is a bug where the profile encoder settings failed to update properly when switching between services that require a different encoder, as well as a bug where the stats window/panel displayed an incorrect disk space calculation when pausing recordings. Last but not least, to improve audio quality, OBS Studio 29.0.1 adds a knee width option to the upward compressor audio filter. For more details, check out the release notes on the project's GitHub page. OBS Studio 29.0.1 is available as a Flatpak app on most GNU Linux distributions, which you can install right now from FlatHub. For Ubuntu users, there's also an official PPA that you can install from the official website.
Yeah, I haven't noticed any of those issues with OBS, but it's not like I'm using it every day or anything, so...
It's not like I'm using it at all. I need a video editor to look at my stuff on YouTube and fix it. I actually asked Rio to work it, but she is too busy, and she says might have a new job.
Well, I'm using OBS right now to manage the stream, but like I said, I haven't noticed any of those issues. So, okay, moving on. Elementary 7 out now from Elementary OS blog. OS 7, codenamed Horus, is available to download now and shipping soon on several high-quality computers. With OS 7, we focused on helping you get the apps you need, empowering you with new features and settings, evolving our developer platform. To get Elementary OS 7 now, head to elementary.io for the download or read on for an overview of what's new. And they don't mean here, they mean on their website. You'd have to click the link in the show notes. Released January 31st, 2023.
We've already made comments about our love of walled gardens environments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm
Now
not
that's
gonna
it
use
for the news,
Elementary.
really. I guess we can babble for a little bit.
No, let's just move
Nope.
on.
We got a bigger security section than usual. Security and privacy. After Log4j, open source software is now a national security issue. And I didn't mark down where this is from. This is from Gizmodo. A meeting at the White House on Thursday saw executives from some of the tech sector's biggest companies meet with administration officials to discuss the need for better security in the open source community. The list of attendees included big names like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, Oracle, and Apple, among others. Unlike proprietary software, open source software is free, publicly inspectable, and can be used or modified by anybody. Because of how useful open source tools can be, big corporations will often utilize them for development purposes. But unfortunately, open source projects need oversight and funding to remain secure, and they don't always get it. For years, open source developers have complained that their software needs better support from big tech and other institutional actors, an issue that is finally gaining some mainstream attention.
Now,
It's not hard.
wanted to stop it right there because it really looks like no one was there actually from any open source software federation or anything like that. None of those got listed.
They mention Apache Software Foundation lower.
Okay.
It's not hard to see why the White House has convened its meeting right now. Just a month or so ago, a pernicious bug was found in the popular open source Apache logging library Log4j. The troubled program, which is used by just about everybody, led to widespread panic throughout the tech industry as companies scrambled to patch the systems and products that relied upon the library for success. Officials from the Apache Software Foundation were also present at Thursday's meeting. Log4j isn't the only open source debacle to occur lately. Just last week, the creator of two widely used software tools decided to inexplicably disable them via a number of bizarre software updates. Merak Squires, the man behind popular JavaScript libraries Faker and Colors, weirdly blitzed the programs and managed to take down thousands of other software projects that relied on them for success. In short, there's clearly room for improvement, and thankfully attendees of the recent White House meeting seem fairly amenable to it. In other words, the big guns want to dip their money-grubbing paws into it.
Well, no, they want the free stuff to, still be available and useful to them.
Yes. At the meeting, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan apparently called open source software a, quote, key national security issue, end quote. Similarly, Google's president of global affairs and chief legal officer Kent Walker published a statement to the company blog on Thursday, arguing that he wanted to see better support for the open source community. Well, give them some money, Google. You got some.
Right? Throw money at them.
For too long, the software community has taken comfort in the assumption that open source software is generally secure due to its transparency and the assumption that many eyes were watching to detect and resolve problems, said Walker. But in fact, while some projects do have many eyes on them, others have few or none at all.
Now, I will say that he's absolutely right there because I had no idea about Log4j until this came up. But another thing I want to mention here is Log4j happened like 6 months ago, and I do remember that other thing, and that was like 5 months ago, where the guy was Merak Squires, shut off some libraries. Yeah, so I assume this article was published recently, but it had to have been written like several months ago.
What exactly the government and other members of big tech have in mind for better open source security isn't entirely clear at this point, but the fact that they're talking about it seems like a good sign.
Yeah, and I hope it
Or a
doesn't.
bad sign.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't scare away open source developers. I hope they're not trying to put the liability onto the guys that are doing stuff for free and making it a potential financial risk when they get sued or whatever. And oh,
Or Microsoft and Google and a bunch of those guys buy a bunch of these little companies and remove the licensing.
add their own licensing.
Mm-hmm.
It, it's a risk that I hope doesn't actually happen. A couple of risks that I hope actually don't happen. Okay, moving on. Unless you got anything else you want to say on that one, Moss. Okay. New bold move Linux malware used to backdoor Fortinet devices. Suspected Chinese hackers exploited a recently disclosed FortiOS SSL VPN vulnerability as a 0-day in December, targeting a European government and an African MSP with a new custom bold move Linux and Windows malware. The vulnerability is tracked as CVE 2022 42475 and was quietly fixed by Fortinet in November. Fortinet publicly disclosed the vulnerability in December, urging customers to patch their devices as threat actors were actively exploiting the flaw. The flaw allows remote, unauthenticated attackers to crash targeted devices remotely or gain remote code execution. However, it was not until this month that Fortinet shared more details about how hackers exploited it, explaining that threat actors had targeted government entities with custom malware specifically designed to run on FortiOS devices. And I know it didn't get mentioned, but this is from Bleeping Computers. The attackers were focused on maintaining persistence on exploited devices by using the custom malware to patch the FortiOS logging process so that specific log entries could be removed or to disable the logging process altogether. Yesterday, Undated, Mandiant published a report about a suspected Chinese espionage campaign leveraging the FortiOS flaw since October 2022, using a new bold move malware explicitly designed for attacks on FortiOS devices. Bold Move is a full-featured backdoor written in C that enables Chinese hackers to gain higher-level control over the device, with the Linux version specifically created to run on FortiOS devices.
The article is dated January 20th, so yesterday would have been January 19th.
Right. Mandiant identified several versions of Bold Move with varying capabilities, but the core set of features observed across all samples include performing system surveying, receiving commands from the C2, Command and Control Center, spawning a remote shell on the host, relaying traffic through the breached device. The commands supported by Bold Move allow threat actors to remotely manage files, execute commands, interactive shell creation, and backdoor control. The Windows and Linux variants are largely the same but utilize different libraries, and Mandiant believes the Windows version was compiled in 2021, almost a year before the Linux variant. However, the most significant difference between the Linux and Windows versions is that one of the Linux variants contains functionality that specifically targets FortiOS devices. For example, a Linux Bold Move version allows attackers to modify Fortinet logs on the compromised system or disable logging daemons, miglogged and syslogged altogether, thus making it harder for the defenders to track the intrusion. Moreover, this version of Bold Move can send requests to internal Fortinet devices, allowing attackers to send network requests to the entire internal network and spread laterally to other devices. Chinese cyber espionage group will continue to target unpatched internet-facing devices like firewalls and IPS-ISD appliances as they offer easy network access without requiring interaction. Unfortunately, it's not simple for defenders to scrutinize what processes run in these devices, and Mandiant says native security mechanisms do not work very well to protect them. There is no mechanism to detect malicious processes running on such devices, nor telemetry to proactively hunt for malicious images deployed on them following an exploitation of a vulnerability, explains Mandiant in the report. This makes network devices a blind spot for security practitioners and allows attackers to hide in them and maintain stealth for long periods, while also using them to gain a foothold in a targeted network. The appearance of custom-made backdoor for one of these devices proves the threat actor's deep understanding of how perimeter network devices operate and the initial access opportunity they represent.
My question is, I've never heard of FortiOS before this.
Me either.
How widespread is it that they're this worried about it?
Yeah, I don't know. But still, how often do you see malware that's specifically targeting a Linux OS?
Yeah. Moving on. Until further notice, think twice before using Google to download software. This is from Ars Technica. Searching Google for downloads of popular software has always come with risks, but over the past few months it has been downright dangerous, according to researchers and a pseudo-random collection of queries. Quote, threat researchers are used to seeing a moderate flow of malvertising via Google ads, end quote, volunteers at Spam House wrote on Thursday. Quote, however, over the past few days, researchers have witnessed a massive spike affecting numerous famous brands with multiple malware being utilized. This is not the norm, end quote. One of many new threats is called Malvert. The surge is coming from numerous malware families, including Aurora Stealer, Iced ID, Meta Stealer, Redline Stealer, Vidar, Formbook, and Xloader. In the past, these families typically relied on phishing and malicious spam that attached Microsoft Word documents with booby-trapped micros. Over the past month, Google Ads has become the go-to place for criminals to spread their malicious wares that are disguised as legitimate downloads by impersonating brands such as Adobe Reader, GIMP, Microsoft Teams, OBS, Slack, Tor, and Thunderbird. On the same day that Spam House published its report, researchers from security firm SentinelOne documented an advanced Google malvertising campaign pushing multiple malicious loaders implemented in .NET. SentinelOne has dubbed these loaders Malvert. At the moment, the Malvert loaders are being used to distribute malware most commonly known as Xloader, available for both Windows and Mac OS. Xloader is a successor to malware known as Formbook. Threat actors use Xloader to steal contacts data and other sensitive information from infected devices. The Malvert loaders use obfuscated virtualization to evade endpoint protection and analysis, to disguise real C2 traffic and evade network detections. Malvert beacons to decoy command and control servers hosted at providers including Azure, Two Cows, Chupa, and Namecheap.
Two Cows is still around? That's nuts.
They are. Now they sold their Ting product to DirecTV. No, I'm backwards. The other one, Dish Network. But in return, they got hired by Dish to do a lot of their back-end work.
Cool.
They have headquarters in Toronto and Tucson. I think it's Tucson. Anyhow, I happen to be a Ting customer, so I'm kind of aware of some of this stuff. Apparently, when Sprint merged with T-Mobile.
Mm-hmm.
They had to divest, both companies had to divest themselves of some of their extra companies to form a new competition, and DirecTV stepped up to be that competition. So Boost has moved to DirecTV. I'm backwards to Dish Network. I am getting hopelessly confused here. Dish Network
It is hopelessly confusing.
now has Dish Mobile, which includes Boost, includes Ting, includes Republic. There were rumors it was going to also include Verizon's little side project, but I don't think that went through. There's one other name in that, but my brains have gotten scrambled. I've been talking too much. And that basically ends our security anyhow, unless Joe has some more to add.
Nope.
So let's wander into our bi-weeklies.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it, Joe.
Okay, over the last couple of weeks, I had some fun and a few days off. I had my 20th wedding anniversary, but Texas was frozen, so we didn't get to do a whole lot. Snow and ice on the ground means we don't like to leave the house because Texans seem to lose their mind out on the roads in those conditions. Plus, I've been through 2 rounds of antibiotics now for a sinus infection. Mostly felt terrible the whole darn time. It's been bad. It's starting to clear up now. I got a couple days left of my antibiotics, but yeah, it's been rough. Now, I did give Jackie one of my Dell Latitudes because she wanted a good tablet with a good touchscreen, and I have switched to using the 1GX for now, which is my little laptop. But Jackie is not a Linux fan and knows Windows a whole lot better, so I ended up having to install Windows 10 on the thing. I tried several different methods to get it working, including Woe USB NG, Rufus, Etcher, and even the Windows USB making tool from my dual booted device. And the only thing that ended up working was Ventoy, which is actually a first for me. I've never been able to get Ventoy to work before, and it worked like a charm this time. It is really, too bad, but the device was not doing much other than collecting dust, waiting for me to find something else to do with it. And it is a really good tablet. I may pull one of the hard drives in it because it does have the 250 gig hard drives in it for use in another project. But for now, it's good where it is. Jackie also knows that I want it back if she ends up not using it or wanting something else. Her only complaint so far is that, the on-screen keyboard doesn't always pop up when you put it into a text box. And this seems to be a common problem, I guess, like all operating systems, I guess, because I've had the exact same problem in a lot of Linux operating systems. And I know how to get around it there. It's just, put a hotkey down on the taskbar to pop up the keyboard. Okay, I've also been doing a lot of 3D printing and a bit of design. I did 3D print a glasses case that worked really well with magnetic latches, but I'm not a fan of the overall size of it. It's kind of huge. So I'm looking for other prints and styles for that. I also printed out some different scaled TARDIS to test out the 0.6 millimeter nozzle that I've started using. I'm happy with the outcome, but I will need to hold on to the prints to actually compare it with the 0.4 millimeter nozzle prints. I also redesigned the standard to Olympic weight adapter that I use so that it has more of a lip on it, so that I don't have to use a weight on one side to hold it together. Makes it so that I can more finely control the amount of weight on a bar. It's a simple change, but it works very well and was held together, and it's held together very well. And also 3D printed some push-up handles so that I can work on calisthenics without putting undue pressure on my wrists. Now, I also designed and 3D printed some very simple discs for a weight-loaded strap. Actually, 2 of them because I needed a couple. And the price online was around $14 each. I designed 2 of them, and one of them used 550 cord. basically a disc with 2 holes in it. And I designed one that used some nylon strapping that I was able to get at Five and Below on clearance for about $1.50. Basically a disc with 2 slits in it that was slightly thicker. Now I calculated it out, and each disc was about 60 cents worth of plastic. The 550 cord that I used was maybe 20 cents worth, so rounded up it comes out to about $3. So I saved $25 and put but the 3D printer is a bar because of the cost of entry. Hold on just 1 second, boss. Okay, sorry about that. I've started designing and prototyping the laptop stand attachment that I'm planning on making for the One GX. It will allow me to move the USB hubs to the bottom instead of the sides, and hopefully make it so that I'm not covering up the exhaust ports with the cable connections. Right now I have made the I've made the right angle connectors that will go into the slots for the controllers on the side, and it goes all the way across the bottom. I can probably show that. So right there. And I have modified it so that the mini HDMI and the micro SD are now accessible, and I'm looking at getting some U-shaped USB solutions that I think, but I think I may have to make some of my own or modify some that are close. I'm also debating things like angle and how much I want to put below the laptop and how tall it'll be and how much it'll end up weighing. Granted, it will be removable, so that's not that big of a deal. I could try out a whole bunch of configurations if I really wanted. Maybe add a battery bank, maybe a 5-volt fan. Also, I made a little tiny insert to hold the screen open at the correct angle when I have my phone mounted to the top as a second screen. Because a lot of the issues were that the phone is heavy enough that the hinges don't quite hold it if it's not exactly at the right angle, and it will flop over. And so with this little adapter that I made, it holds it in the correct position. But I do have my concerns there that either I will forget that it's there, or someone else will try to close my little laptop while it's there and break something on the laptop. But it does work the way that I wanted, and I'll probably just reprint it in orange or red instead of the black so that it's more visible, and that'll help some. Now, also I've started having problems with my back again and back pain, so I am going to have to go back to the VA for physical therapy, but there is a new closer location that opened up, and I no longer have to drive to downtown Dallas for it, except for maybe for the MRI. The new facility is about 20 minutes away, and that will make the chiropractic visits a whole lot easier and not take all day. Now, back to tech stuff. I did try to repair my backup Galaxy S3 watch. It has been on the broken list for quite a while because one of the buttons quit working. It actually is a fairly common problem with the ribbon cable, and the ribbon cable replacements are easy to get. I ordered one and it arrived, and I was looking forward to putting it on, as it is a neat bit of micro soldering on the end of a ribbon cable, so it does take a bit of delicate work. Problems came up when I took the device apart and saw a lot of rust in the bottom. This is a device that I've previously taken apart and did clean the rust out of it but this time I went to do the same, and the center piece of the watch in the bottom popped out. Like the glue that was supposed to be holding it together was just basically gone. So I switched to looking at the electronic side, and I see a lot more rust on the board. I take it apart to look at the ribbon cable, and it seems to be in perfect condition. I turn it on, and the one button is still not working. But because of the other issues with the water damage on the board, I have decided to set it aside. I mean, I did not have to push very hard for that bottom to come all the way off. So I assume this is had some pretty bad moisture exposure, and these components are really, really tiny. I figure though it has a really good screen still, and the upper case is really good, so it should be easy enough to find another with a broken screen at a good price, and just swap it out. Use the internals from that one, and the screen from this one. Well, not so much right now, I guess. There aren't that many on eBay for now, for whatever reason. But I'm gonna have to keep my eyes open until I see one. Basically, I didn't. I think I saw one with a broken screen, and the price was almost the same as one that was just plain working. So I wasn't gonna get it. But hopefully that will change in the future. Moss, what have you been up to?
Well, I got my new router. It's a Netgear C6300 AC1750 dual router and modem, a major upgrade from my old C1000-100 NAS. The installation instructions didn't work, all having to do with dealing with Comcast, and several calls to Comcast did nothing other than schedule a technician appointment. One of the Comcast phone techs suggested calling Netgear, which I thought was passing the buck, but I tried it and it did the trick. The DNS was set wrong and needed to be changed. Netgear suggested Google's DNS. After a brief chat with Bill, I tried using Cloudflare, but after setting that up, everything is so very slow, I switched back to Google and it seems a bit faster. I have not noticed a speed increase on the Wi-Fi bands. Or for that matter, even the Ethernet is not running any faster than it used to, and it kind of should.
Well, adjusting your DNS shouldn't have that much of effect on your speed.
It had a huge effect.
It shouldn't, is what I'm saying.
There's something wrong that we don't know about, and
Right.
I don't know how to look for it.
Okay.
We ordered new phones. This has been not fun. We had phones ordered and then discovered that it was not the latest model. The ad we ordered from did not state the model year. We found the latest model was only about $50 more for many improvements, so we canceled the first order and placed a new one. By many improvements, I mean the system on a chip went from a Snapdragon 480 to a Snapdragon 695. And at least number-wise, that seems significant.
Them some
Then
big
they
numbers.
changed the ad copy on Amazon to state that it was not usable on the carrier we used, Ting, which was not included on the list of carriers at the time that we ordered. Amazon told us we could not cancel. The order was too far along, even though they had not yet shipped. We called our carrier, and they couldn't tell us anything without the IMEI number. So when the phones arrived, the IMEI number was printed right on the bottom of the box. I called up Ting and gave them the IMEI, and they said the phones would work, so we kept them. I had a Pixel 6 waiting in my Amazon basket if needed, but I removed it. The reason we went to, I didn't even mention this, we went to Moto G Stylus 5G 2022 phone.
It's a big old phone, isn't it?
It's a big old, it's only slightly taller than my Pixel 3a XL and about the same width and depth.
Okay, I thought the styluses were like 6.5.
Well, it's taller. It's a problem because I've noticed a few programs that like to think they're running full screen will automatically switch to landscape mode, which is not what I wanted. On my Pixel, they didn't do that. I have found some alternatives in most cases. Which then brings us to moving our stuff to the new phones. Since we were using Calyx OS on the Pixel 3a XLs we were using, we could not sync the data to Google or anywhere else that the new phones would access. So we mostly had to do things manually. We did get our pictures backed up to Google Photos. This has not been fun, and I am currently opposed to using custom ROMs for exactly this reason. When you change phones, you will not be happy. This has not been fun. I said that. I might hate Google, but I hate difficult phone transitions more. I have mine working pretty well now, although some things are still part of the learning curve, and I have heard fewer complaints from Suzanne lately. They're
That's
neat little
weird.
phones.
Well, I haven't done a custom ROM on a phone in quite a while, but it's weird. I don't ever remember having that problem.
Well, if the new phone, I really always wanted to have /e/ on the phone, but I would have to make sure to buy a phone I could put /e/ on, and then wait till I had it rooted and converted before doing the transfer. Calyx OS, however, will not run on anything but a Pixel and one Huawei model. So I basically had to start over, and I'm just sticking to whatever stock Android now. We were up to Android 13 on the Pixel 3a XLs, or the Calyx OS equivalent, whereas we're back to Android 12, but I don't see that as a significant problem.
Right. Okay.
And later on in our innards, we're going to talk about what we can do with our old Androids. So is that about it here?
Yeah, we're moving quite along.
Well, let's move to innards. Take it away, Joe.
Okay, now this started out as what to do with your old Android device, but this is also some of the just the crazy things that I have done to make an Android device more useful. And now first I want to go over some of the things that I've done with an old Android device, and then I want to talk about what a bunch of our Discord users said they are doing. There is a lot of overlap, and I look forward to implementing some of the ideas. I also want to mention that a lot of these are impractical, and were done just to see if I could, or because the device was just collecting dust anyway. But also, it should be mentioned that you can mix and match a lot of these projects together. You might not be able to run a lot of them at once on an older phone, but you sure can run them, as needed. Close it out and open the next one. Something that does need to mention first is that I have always been interested in keeping phones running as long as possible, whether that was by putting on a custom ROMs on the HTC HD2, or passing an old phone off to the kids, or repurposing in various ways. I sometimes have to do a purge of old phones that randomly show up in my collection, and I sometimes end up bringing a bunch home from family visits when people want to get rid of their old ones. Now, it can be a bit of a hassle depending on the device, but for most of them, if they are no longer getting updates from your carrier or from the people that made them, you can put a custom ROM on them from XDA developers and keep them running for even longer. One of the first things that I did with an old phone was use it as an IP cam with a little program called IP Cam in conjunction with Webcam XP. Yes, I was a Windows user at the time. I and my wife used it as an add-on baby monitor to watch the kids. It worked reasonably well for that. I had my concerns since a lot of the buzz online was that it would kill the cameras, since they were not made to do that all the time. But it never really ended up being an issue on the devices we were using. They were just going to collect dust anyway, so what's it matter if you use them till they died? Now, I have used a tablet as a viewer for those IP cams, and I currently use an older Lenovo tablet in conjunction with some actual IP cams to monitor my son while he is in virtual school, so that I can make sure that he actually does his work and not just play HTML5 games all the time. I've also used old Android tablets as digital photo frames that I could easily send new photos to using Resilio Sync or something similar. I've also used many Android devices as sync nodes for Resilio Sync in order to make downloads faster across the whole system. Usually devices that were doing other things as well, with this running in the background. A couple things here. Resilio Sync can make your device run very, very hot because it is throwing a lot of read and writes at your storage medium. So not only that, but it can slow it down a lot. Ask me how I know. It's because, I've done it. But the more devices you get that have the exact same data, the quicker you can put it all onto a new device that you want it on. So well, you do max out at a certain point, but like to a PC or something, if you wanted to sync things to another PC, it would make it much, much quicker to have more devices on the network and all linked to that. I also attempted to use a similar IP camera setup or a permanent Skype application to create an interactive doorbell similar to what a Ring doorbell is now, but that never worked out the way that I wanted. The phone would not stay in a one-click mode to be able to make calls or would not auto-answer. I would have been good if you'd been able to ring my doorbell and then I could call the Skype contact on the phone and have it automatically answer. Somehow it never worked out right, and theft was always a concern. I would have had to make a see-through weatherproof box too, and when I was doing those things, we were still renting. And now we have Ring, so yeah. I also use my phone as a webcam on occasion with DroidCam. I know a couple of listeners mentioned it as well, but it is great for when I left my webcam in the other room or when I need a second camera to show the soldering that I'm working on. It can take a bit of work to get the higher resolutions, but it is well worth it as most phone cameras are pretty good. At least the rear ones. Also, as an alternative to DroidCam, there are some situations that I have found where it is better to use SCR CPY in conjunction with OBS Studio. This method gives you much more control of the zoom and focus and even allows you to control both from your computer with your mouse. And with the wireless ADB, you can do it without a cable if you need to. DroidCam is also without a cable, yes, I am aware. This is really helpful when trying to zoom in on some really tiny soldering. So it can also work, just to magnify something that you're working on if you're having trouble seeing it. I also had a couple of phones that had dedicated IR blasters that did get turned into universal remotes, although that always seemed like overkill for an old phone, so it would usually get replaced by a couple of $5 remotes from Walmart. But it was still pretty cool, and being able to control everything from the Note 3, yeah, that was definitely awesome. I know that were also some builds using the 3.5mm jack and an LED from a remote control, but that seemed a bit cumbersome to me and easy to knock off. So I never really did that one. Now, I know in the not too distant past, I had cranked up a Note 3 and installed the application that was originally there for the remote control, the universal remote on that, and it seemed like it just hadn't been updated in a really long time. Now, I did try several times to set up something permanent in the way of using my phone as a speaker and mic for a computer, as odd as that sounds. And there were several setups that I used in order to make my phone work as the speakers for my computer. Mostly to see if it, could be done, but also so that I did not have to pair my headphones to more than one device. It also allowed me to use the Bluetooth from the phone to the headphones, which has always worked pretty good, and Wi-Fi from the phone to the computer, since Bluetooth audio and Linux have not always been the best of friends. It would also allow me to do things like play music on my computer and walk around the house with my phone in my hand. So if for some reason I was doing something on my computer that I was listening to, and then I needed to go take care of something or use the restroom, I could just pick up my phone and it would all come with me. I've also worked for multiple companies that had a policy stating that you could bring personal tablets into work, but not personal laptops. So I do have a couple of builds that I did to make tablets and phones more useful. I've turned tablets into Wi-Fi phones using Google Voice. I also turned one tablet into an actual phone. I think it was a Surfboard, which had a SIM slot and was easily convertible with a custom ROM. The only problem was that the phone companies really did not like you using a tablet that way because they were afraid that you would overconsume your allotted internet. I think it was Huawei Surfboard, but I could be wrong. It was a long time ago. I've used multiple remote desktops to access home computers, like VNC. Chrome had their remote desktop app. I've also run Linux VMs, although it's always been hit or miss on what actually works from Android, so it's fun to see what works and what doesn't. including, well, I always wanted to use the Linux on Dex, but then I got the Note 10 Plus, hoping that, I'd get to use it, and that was the exact time where they got rid of it. Now, I've also used old phones as dedicated, old tablets and old phones as dedicated media players, whether that's video, Netflix, Plex, or whatever else. I've also used tablets to mirror the screen of my phone to give me a larger device. So that way, I'm actually using my phone and it's much bigger screen. Now, as to I've also set up dedicated MP3 players for myself, for my kids. There are not a lot of companies making MP3 players anymore that are, worth a darn. Mostly because everything can be done from your phone, and so people aren't buying them. But that also means that your MP3 player is now using up your phone's battery and memory, and music can't be played while you're on a phone call. Using an old phone for this purpose means you save your phone's battery and it lasts longer, which is not as much of a problem today as it was a few years ago, but it's also a good reason to... It's still a good reason to load up some different applications on your old phone and turn off all the services that you don't need. It's great to hand off to your kid, or when you are in a situation where you're worried about your main phone possibly getting broken. You can also do this with some really old Android phones as long as you are keeping it dead simple. My son would still be using an S3 as an MP3 player if there were not so many issues with the application that I was using to sync audio to his device, and the fact that he kept installing games on the device. Now, another thing you can do with an old phone is turn it into an emulation station. I've loaded individual emulators on phones, and I have also loaded RetroArch onto phones from the Play Store. The on-screen controls are usually pretty good, and you can pair a Bluetooth controller to the phone or use one of the many dedicated controllers that are currently on the market right now. Another good thing to do with the MP3 player that you hand to a kid is you can also have RetroArch or different emulators installed on it. This was also mentioned by several people on the Discord. Same with a Wi-Fi phone setup. It can all be bundled into one. You don't need the SIM card into it. Just set it up with Google Voice and you're good to go. Retro gaming on a phone is actually pretty awesome. NES, Genesis, many others work very well, even all the way up to PS1 games. The notable exception, as always, being N64, which is always hit or miss. Now, Neo Geo will always be one of my favorite things to emulate, and there's a lot of really good fighting games on there that will keep you occupied for a very long time. Now, moving on, a recent thing that I have come across and started using old phones for is as replacements for Raspberry Pis. A Raspberry Pi and an old phone should cost about the same or more for the old phone, depending. Now, right now, Raspberry Pi prices are extremely high, so you can probably get some older phones at lower prices. But the power consumption is probably less on the phone when the screen is off and the phone does have a built-in battery. Of course, it is less useful when you think about things like GPIO, but there are still some cool things that you can do. I run Octoprint from my backup phone. This is incredible for controlling my 3D printer, and I use the camera on the phone to watch everything in real time. I can push out new G-code from my computer and start the print remotely as needed. Much easier than pulling out the SD card and walking it back and forth every time. I will say that I did have some trouble loading the application on some really old phones, but it worked just fine on an S7 and on the OnePlus Nord N200. I also have not loaded a lot of the add-ons that are supposed to make Octoprint more useful, but I am loving it for what it does as is. I have also recently found out that you can run Pi-hole from a phone. It looks like it will even run from older phones, but you do need root. Considering how difficult it is to get a hold of Pis right now, if you have any old phones lying around and none of the other projects appeals to you, then this one is probably perfect. Pi-hole, if you don't know, is a DNS sinkhole or an ad blocker for your network. It can also run your local DNS and DHCP if you want. And I do run Pi-hole on my network, but that's from a Raspberry Pi, Raspberry Pi 0W, and that works extremely well. But yeah, if you can't get a hold of one, or if you want to use your Pi Zero or Pi for something else, then this is a great way to free it up if you have an old phone just sitting in a drawer somewhere. It's going to be plugged in all the time anyway. As long as you don't have battery bloat, you'll be good. Now, one thing that I would like to try to set up is using a phone as an SSH gateway for a network. I'd love to see if I could get that working, along with something like fail2ban, just for that extra layer of security and to see how it would work. Now, I've also used my phone as a mouse and keyboard for my PC using something like KDE Connect, which is awesome. Very little configuration is required. Just install on both devices and link them up from the same network. KDE is not required for that, but having it does provide some extra functionality in like regards to being able to text message from your desktop using your phone.
Couldn't you do that on the other versions of Connect, like Zorin Connect and G Connect?
That I don't know. I do know that KDE Connect works on Mint, but Cinnamon, but only with some of the functionality. I don't know about any of the other versions of Connect. Now, I also mentioned before that I've used Android phones or Android devices as second screens for laptops and even for tablets on occasion. Desk screen works very well for this, but you can also use the same dummy screen method that desk screen uses along with carefully configured VNC to get the same effect. There may be some latency, but on my network, I don't see any. I've even watched a couple of television episodes of shows to test audio latency, and everything worked out fine. As in the picture and the audio stayed in sync throughout the whole thing. This works either through VNC Viewer or from a website with desk screen, which does not have a lot of overhead. So if you have an older tablet with a good screen, then this would be perfect for that. Sad to say, it would even extend the life of old iPads, which do have awesome screens, which I think we've already mentioned in this show. Now, moving on from that, from our listeners, we had some really good suggestions.
Why don't I cover this part?
Yeah,
Joe?
go for it.
Save your voice a little bit. So, from our listeners, we had some really good suggestions. Nate mentioned using a tablet as a home assistant hub or rotating picture that could be made to turn on when motion is detected. Joe commented he really needed to look more into home assistants, as it sounds like it's a very powerful and useful tool. Trogblotter mentioned putting a ROM onto a phone for his mother, as well as using an old tablet as display screen in his van for Google Maps and a couple of trusted applications. And Joe said he wanted to mention that he also wanted to do something similar and turn an old tablet into a head unit for a car. A tablet, a couple of wires, and an amp and a way to mount it is all you really need. But being in Texas, he always has concerns about the tablet melting. Actual Android head units are lower cost now, but it would still be fun to do it on his own. Ziggy said, 1, using my old phone as a webcam with DroidCam. 2, you can use it as a GPS device. 3, 2 of my old phones are unlocked and rooted so they can be upgraded and downgraded for testing apps. 4, use it as a streaming device to cast stuff. If the device has a good processor, you can connect a controller and stream/play Android games onto TV. 5, use something like Razer Kishi or Backbone and it becomes a decent handheld gaming device. 6, use it as an expensive flashlight. He's got a laughing smiley face there. 7, if it has decent speakers and sound, it can be used as a music device. I would definitely recommend that for my Google Pixel 3a XL. 3, on rooted 8, I can't count. 8, on rooted phones, I believe there's a project to run Pi-hole. Joe mentioned that. Several of these were mentioned, but the Pi-hole idea did come from Ziggy. SOC mentioned make it a system monitor just hanging around by your setup. Sounded like a good idea to Joe, but he needed to do some more research because I'm not sure how to set it up. Username undefined said, I use an old phone with headphone jack as a media device. First, it was an old Samsung Galaxy 5, and now it's a Moto G7 I got cheap on Amazon. It has no SIM card. I loaded my music collection on it, installed a music player and a podcast manager. It is set to pair with my vehicles and only connects to my home Wi-Fi for podcast updates. I don't have to worry about my phone battery being run out because the media device is carrying that load. I can leave it mounted in the vehicle throughout the day without having to worry that my phone is there when I am here as I get in and out of the vehicle all day. Mostly the same reasons that I have for doing that. Rob Hawkins says he uses his old phone as a camera with Droid Cam. Loon Lovehern says, I just try to refurbish it with Lineage OS and use it for basic tasks. Depends on how powerful it is, or at least use it just for calls and as a music player. Leo chimes in with, he uses an old phone to record video for Linux user space. The quality is higher than pretty much any sub $200 camera I could buy to do the same job, and it'll still Nextcloud sync, etc., instead of fiddling with SD cards. And like Rob H., I use Droid. Leo says he used Droid Cam before he bought a decent webcam. Getting it set up was a slight pain compared to plug-and-play webcam. And as I pointed out, I did load Calyx OS onto 3 Google Pixel 3a XL phones. One of them got a broken screen. While I've stopped using mine as a phone, it still has better speakers than my new phone, and I intend to keep using it as a podcast or music player. I now have 2 Pixels for sale, one with a slightly broken screen if anyone's interested. And that's pretty much all the comments we had. Do you need to chip in anything else, Joe?
Nope. I mean, yeah, that was pretty much, everything I wanted to go over there. I username undefined when he was talking about the using it as an MP3 player. That was my statement. Mostly the same reasons that I have for using it. I was just saying that we have the same reasons for using an old phone as an MP3 player if that's what we want. And then Ziggy with his use it as an expensive flashlight comment. I don't know what it is now, but with OK Google, you used to be able to do the Knox and Lumos to turn on and off the flashlight there, which was interesting for a while, and that's Harry Potter references.
Okay, well, we kind of had our vibrations mingled in there. We didn't have any other vibrations, so let's move on to check this out. Had a couple things show up in our Discord. I didn't do complete follow-ups on them. Pika Backup from 9 to 5 Linux. Their comment, backup has never been easier. And we've talked about this way back when. Hushboard. Stuart Langridge came up with this app to mute your mic while typing. And there are links in the show notes to check that out.
Is this a new one?
It's a very much upgrade.
Okay.
He thanked a few people for their help on the project.
I'm surprised you're not running it today.
Okay, housekeeping and announcements. Thank you for listening to this episode of mintCast. If you see something you'd like to hear about, tell us. Send us email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube. Post at the mintcast subreddit. Chat with us on Telegram and Discord, or post directly at mintcast.org. Our next episode is 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Sunday, February 19th. We have a link in the show notes to convert that to your time zone. Our next roundtable live stream is 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Saturday, February 11th, and we have a link in the show notes to convert that to your time zone. Our next roundtable live stream at 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Saturday, February 25th, and we have a link in the show notes to get that converted to your time zone. Our live stream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. So, Joe, where can we find more of you?
Well, I'm on a couple other podcasts. I'm on Linux Thing Tech Show, which you can find at tllts.org. I'm on the Linux Lugcast, which is at linuxlugcast.com. You can send me an email directly, jb@mintcast.org. I try to answer every email that I get. Or you can buy me a coffee with Ko-fi. Moss?
Well, I'm still doing Full Circle Weekly News. I almost completed my second year. Distro Hoppers Digest. You can email me at bardmoss@pm.me. I'm on Mastodon at zyvola@hosttux.social. And my other information can be found at itsmoss.com. Bill will be back next episode. You can reach him at bill@mintcast.org, Bill_H on Discord, at WCHauser3 at fauceton.org on Mastodon, at WCHauser3 on Twitter, and at WCHauser3 on Facebook. And his other podcasts are Linux OTC and 3 Fat Truckers, 3ftpodcast.org. Before we leave, we want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make. We need to acknowledge that my teeth are not staying in my mouth very well. Try again, Rio.
You want me to do this one?
Sure, you can do that one.
Before we leave, we want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make mintcast possible. Audio Freak Rio for our audio editing, archive.org for hosting our audio files, Hobstar for our logo, and ItRG for the animated Discord logo, Londoner for our time syncs, Bill Hauser for hosting the Linode, which runs our website maintenance, and the Nextcloud server on which we host our show notes and raw audio. The Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about. Thanks, Clem.
Thanks, Clem.
And go. That's, I think, the shortest show ever.
I'm not sure about that, but
I think by like 2 minutes, it's the shortest show.
Okay. We'll find out when Rio's done cutting it out.
Yeah, and it'll probably just end up being 1 since it's under an hour and a half. All right, let me stop my recording there. And
yeah, I've got hour 18.
Yep.
Let's do export
audio. This is 405.
Okay.
mintCast. Show audio. Okay.
My fan just woke up.
All right. It converted 12,205 books from .lit to EPUB.
Okay.
That's Caliber, not Audacity.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I am done with Audacity. I will close that.
Okay, we need a folder.
We need a folder. I need to do a lot of work on these show notes. And I wish there was a way to mark the spots so I could just go back to them. Everything I tried has caused the screen to jump around.
Yeah.
And something you did made my screen go, oh boy. It not only jumped around, but it completely reset. I had to increase my view size again.
I don't know what happened at that point that I was reading. I know I had only like 1 line left, but for some reason I ended up in like the innards.
Yeah.
And I had touched nothing. Oh, and we are still streaming.
It might have been my fault. I might have. I think at one point I had found an extra bullet, and I just did a backtrace to fix that, and I think that's what threw it. This is not the best software for this. It
works, but
we were using the best. We just didn't like it.
Well, we didn't like the owners on the back end.
Mm-hmm. Owners on the back end. It's got a song going there, yeah.
Okay, that's uploading. We're still streaming. I got to go over to Firefox and end the stream. Thank you, everybody that listened. We love you. Talk to you later.
Don't take it personal, but we do love you, yeah.
All right, the stream is